Hey everyone! Sorry we're running a little bit late today, but yeah, ready to start off with feedback. Let me make sure that I have all the links up and running here. I think we just have two today, AJ and Shari, and then Anuja asked a question that we'll talk about after because he won't be able to be live watching, so he's gonna watch later. But let me go ahead and start with AJ, and let me know if you guys can't hear me or if I need to change anything because my mic's been acting kind of weird today. So, okay, cool. I think that's everything. Okay, so first we'll start with AJ, and let's see, you're doing more blocking, add some in-betweens, pushing things, automatic breakdowns. Not sure about the part where she says heartburn radiating from my kneecaps. Feeling weird about the overall movement and the gesture of the hands before that. Okay, cool. Let me take a look. Hi, Naboo engineer. Okay, so let's watch.
I'm sorry, and if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps, and I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning.
Nice, this is looking good.
I'm sorry, and if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps, and I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning.
Nice. Cool. Okay, so first thoughts, I think everything's looking good. Let me make sure I'm on the right one too. Yeah, okay. Yes, this is the first one. Yeah, it's looking good so far. I like how you're pushing things. You already have some cool expressions in here.
I'm sorry, and if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps, and I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I really like how you added a lot of asymmetry to her gestures and stuff, like stuff that we were talking about last week of just making it feel a little less twinned in some areas. I really like that. Or just subtle little things like how you changed it here, because before it was very much just kind of twinned hands. It's just very subtle changes, but it makes a big difference. So really like how you done that. And also, sorry, I'm out of frame. I just noticed while I'm drawing because I need to get a new tablet arm because it won't come far enough forward and my webcam has a short cord, so I can't change them. So hopefully if I start acting something out, I'll remember to move this way. But if not, just yell at me in the chat and I'll move so I can see, because sometimes I might forget. But let me just kind of go through one by one.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so one thing, I know you're more blocking the body right now, but I just have a few kind of facial expression notes, because now that you said you're kind of getting into blocking the face and the general expressions overall in these parts. So I'll just give you a few notes on that, but I'll do it quick and then I'll go back to the body because I know that's kind of what you're focusing on. But little things like this, you have the brows coming down, right? Use a weird size. I think Sketch changed everything and now I'm confused. Also, they decided that I don't deserve pin pressure. Can we make it smaller, please? Sorry, technical difficulties. Give me a minute here. Okay, that'll work. But basically for stuff like this, when you have her brows, so concerned brows and knitted and kind of down, you have the general idea of the shape, but they need to be further in, an X towards the middle of her face. So right now, if she feels very this is a very compressed and even look at your drawing here. See how far in they come? They're almost to the edges of her nostrils, right? So right here, they're kind of a little further out, and her face is a little bit of asymmetry here, so it's going to be a little bit different. But basically, just getting these brows a little bit further in, especially these inners, will help her feel more worry brow and concern, and getting some, it'll also help you get some nice asymmetry in there. But basically, so you start to get those wrinkles of they're really you see if I do it, you kind of get those two wrinkles there of they're really concerned and in there. And one thing that's always nice to do, if I look from far away, kind of your reference right here, there's almost this slant to both the eyes, right? So as a general rule of thumb, obviously you can't go too much because, oh, you wrote something. Oh, you didn't work that much in the last part. Okay, that's fine. All good. I'll keep that in mind. But like with the eyes, like sometimes you can push it too far and it's too much, but a lot of times it's nice to mimic what the eyebrows are doing with the upper eyelids, right? So if she's doing this, right, she kind of has this slant to her brows. It's nice to round out these eyes a little bit, because right now, like, I'm looking at her eyes, and this is kind of like a feeling overall through the shot. Yeah. Some places are better than others, but as an overall note through like Aya's expressions in this shot, I would really try to make sure that you're shaping the eyes specifically away from default, because Aya's default, like I talk about this a lot with Aya, like her eyes cut off a lot. They kind of end up like this. Right, oops, that's disgusting. But basically like Aya's eyes in default kind of come in like this, where like this eyelid cuts off at a really awkward angle at her pupil. And like some character designs look like that, right? And it works for them, but Aya's eyes looks way more appealing on her when you round out the tops. And a lot of times a general rule of thumb is to also keep the apex of the curve of the upper eyelid over where the pupil's at, right? Because if you think about an eyeball from the side, right? The pupil, actually eyeballs are kind of shaped like this. So that cornea is what pushes out the eyelid, like even from a small aspect, because that kind of goes up into the eyelid. So wherever that eyelid is, the apex of the roundness of the top eyelid is where it needs to be, right underneath the pupil, right? So if she was, so right now, like as you have the eye shaped, I'd want the pupil to be here, because, which is going to look ridiculous because she's looking two other ways. But see, this would feel more like, and then you'd have like this one be here, if that makes sense. But basically, you just want to be able to always have the apex. Now, obviously, as any rule in animation, you can break that, right? But basically, like what I would do for this, she's looking straight at camera, right? So I want the apex of, also watch your eye direction before I give this note. This eye feels a little bit like it's looking this way, and this eye's looking like straight at camera. Just something feels a little off. Like see how like this lower lid is kind of cutting into it? I might just move this eye up a little bit to kind of match. I have issues myself with like Aya's eye direction, because she has such bowling balls for eyes. It's really easy to move it a millimeter and it totally looks messed up with Aya. So I feel your pain. But see if you can get it something maybe more like that. I might even bring this one in a little bit more. But basically, like, back to my note, see how now it's starting to cut it off here and the apex is right here. So bring that apex so it's here. Right? This is where you want it, because that's going to be directly above your pupil, and that's going to be the part of the eye that's pushing out. And this actually kind of goes too for the bottom lids as well, not as to an extreme, because a lot of times our eyes are looking up, but especially if the eyes are looking down, you're going to have the same thing of like the apex of the roundness of that bottom lid needs to also be right. And so for here, this is where the apex, so you're going to kind of open up this inner eye a little bit more to show a bit more white here, and then close this one. Actually, this one might be nice to get a little bit of like, push this cheek up, right? Because you're really pushing this corner. So I try to push that cheek up to show that that's your compression side, right? You're alligatoring it this way. So push that cheek up into the eye and show that there's something being affected here, and kind of like round out that cheek. Like I think that's good, something like that. And then you're also, as a like rule, you'll always mimic that shape of your upper eyelid with the upper crease as well, which you're already doing, which is good. But just like when you move it over, make sure that you move this over too, especially right here, right? And then for this pose, I'd try to move maybe this nose a little bit more this way. Just because right now it feels like this whole top of the head's going that way and then the bottom of the head's going this way. You kind of feel like you're having like a break in the head instead of like a curve. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I think that's what I would do for this expression. And just watch out. I know Aya's kind of difficult because she has some weird deformations with like her cheek if you try to bring up a really graphic like curve to her mouth. And right here, I feel something kind of weird going on here. I just might try to like round that out a little bit. Or not round it out, the opposite. Sharpen that up a little bit right here. And like you can still show that it's like pressing into the cheek. And then also one thing, again, this can get a little tricky on Aya because you don't have like full control like you do like on the Apollo or Artemis rigs. But she does have a nasal fold controller hidden in her nostril control on either side. So I would kick in a little bit of that because she's really like pushing that up. And like if I do that, I get a really intense line right here, right? So push that up, and sometimes they can look kind of gross on Aya because you can't really drag that nasal fold to where you want, but you can engage it a little bit. That way it feels like those muscles are really, that cheek is being affected. Because right now it just feels like she has this really wide, like pushed expression, but like none of her cheek or eye area is being affected by it. So I would just try to really add some more connectivity to that. Like these eyes are better here. Like I would say this here is pretty close. I might move it even a little bit more, and this is where you need to be more conscious of the crease. But yeah, I think that's a little bit more of like the general principle, right?
I'm sorry, and if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps, and I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning.
And yeah, and as an overall like rule for your shot, I don't see much at all of any X translation with the brows. And Aya looks really strange if you don't really push that whenever she knits her brows together and like they come in, especially here. Like this will look really weird once you start getting into spline because they'll just feel like they're not actually a tension. Because like brows, you can't bring them down without bringing them in an X, right? So for here, like they need to definitely come in. And you can push hers really far, right? Until she has like that. She even has a control, I think it's like a little yellow control right here that you can, especially when you have like a side view, you can like bring them out or in, which will be really helpful here. You can kind of see some of that kicking in, but you can basically change the Z depth of that for the severity of how far that brow tension comes in or out, which is a nice little trick. But yeah, just make sure that whenever the brows are coming down, they're also coming in through your whole shot, because I noticed a lot of areas where they're not, that they should. Also here, this expression, I would try to get more diversity and like more range in your brows. Because here she comes in, I'm sorry, when she's there, like at this beginning, this opening of the shot, like in this, I want to see her brows up. So that way she goes, I'm sorry, and everything compresses. Because you have that nice feeling of like the body compressing and the face kind of like on, and like pressing up the cheeks and everything's compressing. So this should be your expansion pose. So she's like, ooh, and then I'm sorry, and everything compresses at the same time. Because like that's what makes the animation feel so organic and alive, and you find those moments to really emphasize and amplify those moments of expansion versus compression, and like throughout everything, right? People usually think that just in like squash and stretch with the body or, you know, the torso, but like that's with the face, that's with the pose, that's with the feeling of a shot, right? Or even a feeling of a character. You find those moments that you can like expand it and then compress. So here, like, you know, I might even be tempted to do something like this. Also, why is it this? There we go. You know, and then this is when the brows can be out, you know, an X like you have them here, because then when they come in, they're going to go out and then down and in. So you always kind of have like a circular, you offset your TX versus your TY of your brows to make it just feel really nice and fleshy. And especially here, like same thing, like watch out for these eyes. You're getting like this feeling to the eyes, that's slanting. Especially on here, it's like starting to cut stuff off. Right, so really just try to get this feeling like more open and that apex of those top lids. Yeah, something like this.
I'm sorry.
And like she could be, you have this moment of expansion, right? Of like looking, and then she looks up. Like she could start come down like a quarter of the way with her brows, and like her face starts compressing. Of like, basically like it will be 3 steps, like expansion, worry, compression, right? That's kind of what you want. So this will probably be good. You might end up having to be a little bit higher than this, but this is when you'll start to have some of that. Because basically you're going to be going from like, because you can push Aya's brows so much because she has a lot of forehead to work with. And I find that a lot of the most appealing shots with Aya is when her brows are pushed, because it just looks better on her face, and she has such big eyes. You can usually get away with like a lot more brow movement. So, you know, maybe she's here. I might have pushed this too far, but maybe just something a little bit higher, but also coming in a little bit. And then this is going to be kind of your like one chunk before you go into the complete compression.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And if it is any...
Let me zoom out so I can watch by. But kind of all those notes about the face, I would just go through and do a pass on your shot. Like, you know, here I see the eyes, same thing. I would say, like, round out those eyes. Make sure that the apex is over top of the pupil. All that stuff. So.
I'm sorry. And if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating my kneecaps.
And you mentioned something about, what was it, that you weren't sure about the gesture? Or the movement? Yeah. Okay. So you were not sure about the overall movement and gesture of the hands before that. So let's take a look specifically at that.
Consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating. Consolation, I have heartburn that is... Consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating. Sorry, and if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating. Any consolation, I have heartburn that is... If it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating my kneecaps. And if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating my kneecaps. And if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is...
I really like what she's doing in her reference here for that gesture.
Consolation, I have heartburn that's any consolation. I have heartburn.
There's something really satisfying about this moment here. Watching like this side. Oh, it is a day. I was wondering why my pen wasn't working and I was drawing with the opposite side. But basically like watching her here, her reference. I really like this little whoop, like flip that she does. I think that's interesting, and that's kind of a cool way to get from like, you know, this pose to flip here. It's almost like she's not even moving, like translating her hands. It's just kind of like all in this little wrist flick.
I have heart.
It's interesting. She goes like flick, and then she like bevel, like for a dance term, she like bevels up and then like almost does this little arc into like placing her hands. It's really interesting. I think that would be a cool way to get into it, because right now I'm not sure it's working what you have of like with this hand kind of staying there and almost moving back, and then this hand going like over this way. Like this just feels really messy to me, like, and very complicated, and I feel there's a way to simplify this movement. Like she can be here, right? Because I do think that in the reference this is very like twinned, and like she's straight on toe camera, right? So it's not even like matching technically. So if it's here, she has like the hand a little bit down, and then she's gonna go like flick here. I think that's fine, and like that would be a good gesture to get into it. And I would just take those little, the things that I mentioned from this reference that I really like that are unique. You know, so maybe instead of it being this far down, I still want to see like this kind of movement, right? So you technically are twinning in terms of you have the same kind of hand pose technically, but you just like, I'm not sure about this, like how this hand feels down here. I would want to see that a little bit more up and just like a little bit more offset in terms of like height. you know, because then you're getting rid of that twinning feeling, but you're still like having it so that way she can like flick it into this nice
I
gesture.
have heartburn that is heartburn that
Yeah, because it's really okay. The more I look at it, the more I would say just follow that reference of what she's doing, but just have it offset and at a different angle, right? Because she's here, she like flicks her hands around and then goes into this, which I think is an interesting way to be like, instead of it just going like linear to here, right? She's like doing this nice little like flick up and then into her chest, which is interesting, and I haven't really ever seen that before. So I would love to like see that in your animation instead of this, and then like it just feels too messy, and I feel like, especially since you have lots of gestures in the shot, it would be nice to like simplify it, right? Just make it simpler, and I think it will help a lot. Oh, also, what just happened? Hold on. Okay, there we go. That was weird. I hit a button and my cursor ended up on my third monitor, and I'm not sure why. So, okay, now I got it back, I think. There we go. Sorry about that. But yeah, so anyways, that's kind of like what my thoughts are about, yeah, with the part with the hands. Okay, cool. I think that would simplify a lot of things and would work pretty well.
Consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps. That is radiating my.
I might. No, I think that actually works. I like the. I think this works. I was possibly thinking about flipping it, of like her screen left hand is low and then her screen right hand is high. But honestly, I think this works. It's kind of interesting, like how she's like, ooh, like leaning down into it.
I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps. Heartburn that is heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps.
And I think honestly here, like, I like the gesture that she's doing. It's very specific and kind of fun. And the only thing that I would say that I would push more is the up and down of her body. Because, like, if you listen to the dialogue, you can actually hear her do, like, a inhale right here.
I have heartburn that is radiating.
It's really slight, but she goes, radiating in my kneecaps. I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps. So I would love to see even more inflation of, like, I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps. And then when she says radiating, she drops into it. I know we've talked about that before, and like you have some of that in here already, right? She comes up a little bit here, but I would really push this. Like I would like push it until it feels like too much. Get her almost standing straight up. See how it, like, push it till you think it looks bad. Like, and it probably will, but I think basically if you push it to 100% and it feels bad and you back off 10, I think it'll feel great. If that makes sense. That's a really, I know, like, cryptic note to give. But I think if you can get her to stand up, maybe even to the point of, like, I mean, maybe something even like this, like, ridiculous. Wow, can I not draw Aya's head today? You know, if she's, like, here. Maybe even seeing some of that, like, neck. Nah, just kidding. I lied. But just, like, having her maybe even almost start to, like, reverse C. You know, just having her come up way more, like, almost straight up, and then drop into that radiating. I think you can push that a lot, because right now it doesn't read at speed that she's, like, radiating. And I think that's a really fun moment, and you have enough of a pause there that you can get away with a pretty big, like, radiating into my kneecaps. So I think that'd be nice.
Radiating in my kneecaps. Radiating in my kneecaps. Sorry, and if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps. I'm sorry, and if it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating in my kneecaps. I have heartburn that is.
Also, I'd back off a little bit of the hip here. I don't know, it just stands out to me when I watch it. you know, have it be something a little bit more like this. And I know it kind of breaks the line, like it doesn't make it as, you know, smooth the line of action, because Aya does have like very hippie hips. Like they stick out on one side if you rotate them and see. But especially here, like I want to see them straight. You know, something more like this. And then when she drops into this, that's when that hip can hitch out, because that's when she's like shifting weight to the other side and like coming down, and those hips are taking the weight. But just it feels like they're kind of stuck in that on the high and then the low, and so it doesn't make it feel like the weight is coming down and taking it, if that makes sense.
My kneecaps and
This is I love this. This is fun.
Radiating my kneecaps, and
And I would watch out for the hips. Right now, it almost feels like if I was to look at Aya from the side, it feels like this is her hips right here, and then this is her chest right here, and it just kind of feels like she's like, and then this is her back. This is kind of what it feels like. It feels like something like this, like her back and her hip is like way too bent. I don't know how to explain it, but basically like it feels like her chest and her hips are on top of each other, and the hip should be like back here, right? And that chest should be over top, and she should be kind of countering it with her. And then ideally, right, underneath her legs are going to be bent to help counter that weight. And then like her head's here, like her feet could probably even be further. So this is probably what's going on underneath the shot cam, right? But like I just feel a little bit like her hips and her chest are bent on top of each other, and her hips need to be back in order for it to make sense, like for her legs to be forward, right? So something like that. So I would try to back off of like either like just translating the hips further back and like having them not as tucked under, and like rotate X, if that makes sense. So they should be here. And right now they feel like they're here.
My kneecaps, and I have my kneecaps, radiating my kneecaps, and I have my kneecaps, and I haven't taken.
This is a fun pose. I like her smile, like her expression and stuff is great. I like her eyes here. This feels a little bit more like I was talking about, of like having the eyes rounded out. This one you could possibly push more of like that apex is right here. This one maybe even a little bit, but these are way better. Like, also I'd try to get just a little bit. She's not super smiling, but like I would try to get a little bit of that cheek involvement here.
I haven't taken a dump since
This is picky, but just try to make sure like that lip is a little bit like over this way, and it just, right now it just looks like she's a little lopsided with that bottom lip, especially going into this. Like, see this here, like I would try to tuck that in and then just get that lip a little bit more like over. And I would start to seal the lips here, like use the lip zip attribute, so that way you're not getting that ugly like teeth and then tongue and then mouth bag kind of shot.
Wednesday. I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday.
So for here, the one thing, like this was the biggest thing when I watch it all the way through that stands out to me that I think could be simplified in terms of like her body movement, is towards the end here. She's moving a lot in screen space, and I think kind of the whole gag is she's been so, for lack of a better term, animated in the way that she's gesturing and reacting for this entire shot. You know, I'm sorry, and if it is any like she's really moving a lot, which I love, and that makes it really interesting because she feels like frantic and manic. I'd love this to be a moment of like pause of, and I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning. Like I would not even move her much at all, like in screen space. Like I would keep her, once she gets to here, she stays here. Like I'd want to see her kind of stay, maybe at most by the end of the shot she's here. Just because like you kind of want to play this up as like she's like, haha, my life is going crazy and I have heartburn radiating my kneecaps and I haven't taken a dump since. Wednesday. Like, this is kind of when she's realizing that, like, her life's, like, a hot mess. And so she's, like, moving. You have all this nervous energy. And then having that contrast is what I think will, like, really make this shot sing. Because that's one of the biggest things that I always try to look for in my work and to push a lot is contrast and movement, right? Think about a dancer. That's what makes dance so interesting to watch. It's not necessarily about the movements that they're doing, but it's the space in between the movements. Or like they even use that for music. Like music without the space in between the notes, you wouldn't have music, right? It would just be a smash of sound. So that spacing is so important. Yeah, so at the end, like having her stand still will really contrast all that nervous energy you had before. And I think it will just make it feel a lot more clear that what the intention, because right now it just feels like this shot with the movement that you have, it feels like she has all this nervous energy and she's like, I haven't had a dump since Wednesday morning, and which is fine and it works, but to me that's what makes it feel student-y, is like you're not seeing those moments of like, ooh, it would be cool to pause her here and to show that contrast of like that quiet moment, finding that quiet moment that where you can like quiet down the movement and make people look at something, right? Because if you're all of a sudden have this majority in your shot of movement, or you know, a certain kind of energy in your whole shot, and if you change it like quickly, it's going to force someone to look somewhere else because they're like, oh, the movement stopped, what? So then they're going to focus on her face, and that's when you really play up the I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning. And like at the end, that's when you can drop her. Like it could even be fun to play around with the thought of her being in this pose. I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning. Like maybe she like accents it with each one, right? But maybe she's like in this pose for I haven't taken a dump since, because right now I think you move through it.
Taken a dump since Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I would really try to see. I think that would feel good if you kept her in like this pose. I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning. Right? So like you have her in this like happy, like kind of out of her mind thing, to all of a sudden she like drops the face, and maybe you can have a little bit of like the hand dropping, and then like kind of a little bit of rotate X of like the whole torso kind of going down. Wednesday morning. And that's when she like drops at the completely at the end. I think that would be an interesting way to play it.
Taking a dump since
like if she's here, let's see. If she's here, can I grab this, please? Oops, I grabbed the wrong sketch. There we go, I think that's it. What if I turn on hell drawing? Let's see.
I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday.
Can I have ghosting on? Yeah. No, I need more. Okay, that's why. Just seeing like if this would work. Ooh, what did I change? There we go. Oh, that new.
Since Wednesday morning.
Yeah, and then here, you know, I'm pushing this like crazy, right? So it's not going to be exactly like this. So this is quite extreme in like how I'm pushing it. But just to get like the general feel, I think this. You know, maybe we.
Morning.
Let's see. Let's see how this feels.
I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning.
Yeah, that's kind of how I would do it. The timing's obviously a little bit off, but I think like
taken a dump since Wednesday morning.
I think that would be fun to like keep her like that's as much as I would move her screen left, right? And basically just having that like stillness and then just like keeping her in this pose longer, I think would be an interesting choice. Instead of having her move through it, it's kind of like she's like, I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning. Like I think having that kind of like trying to think of the word, but like that contrast between those beats will be really interesting. So, and just like doing it really quick, rough like that, I think it works in terms of like the timing and like the feeling. I think the feeling is a lot better than just having her move through the end of the shot. So hopefully that makes sense and hopefully that helps you kind of see a little bit more of like what I'm thinking in my head. So let me turn these off. I know you said you haven't worked a ton on like the end of the shot, so this is just like stuff to think about moving forward and like going into it, and possibly this is a little bit more of a change, so that's why I wanted to go ahead and say it now, even though I know you haven't like worked a ton on the end.
Wednesday morning.
And then you can basically still end in this exact pose, but just have it happen more like morning, and then all of your acting is going to be on the face there, right? So same pose, but just like cutting out these in-between poses of like her taking more steps and like slowly losing it, and have it be a bit more abrupt of like how she like loses her pizzazz for life. So that would be my thoughts about the end. Let me watch it one more time. I'm sorry, you know me, I gotta say it. Bimbo clasps. Get these a little bit more. There's something just weird right here with like something with that. Same thing here, and this is kind of an Aya-centric issue of her forearms bow out the opposite way that they should on default, which makes me so upset. So just be aware of that and try to move this thumb out maybe a little bit more. The thumbs just feel a little bit like they're cramped like underneath the hand, so I would just kind of move them out a little bit more to feel a bit more natural to be on. I really like this hand pose. That's really nice of like I was talking about last week, like having the fingers overlap a little bit. It's interesting to look at. I like it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
When you have her come up here, I'd love to see a little bit more of an antic with the shoulders as well. Right now it just feels like it's the whole chest. I'd love to feel a little bit like, I'm sorry, like the shoulders almost coming up and like rotating down and around. I think that'd be nice to see. Like they come up and then
I'm sorry.
Tears, you know, they're still going to be up, but basically they're going to look more up because she's rotating forwards, right?
I'm sorry, and if it is I'm sorry.
I think if you're going for like this sort of smear, this exaggerated, let me get red so I can see what I'm doing. I'd really try to push this head and drag it a lot and have it like dip down.
Sorry, and if it is
So right now she just feels a little bit stiff through this smear, and like if you're gonna do a smear like to this level of like really dragging the head, I want to see like follow through of that head. Like it's coming this far down and she's already kind of like tucking it. I want to see the next frame like barely see her eyebrows, right? Because she's tucking it so much, and then it's gonna like snap up into this pose here. Also, same thing, Aya, oddity. Watch out for this shape with the forearm. Just try to smooth that out a bit, right? It should be more like here. And something about this elbow feels a little odd to me here. It feels like it's foreshortened or something. I may try to get it like a little bit closer or like closer to camera. I'm not sure.
If it is any consolation, I have heartburn.
Also, watch out here. Something weird is happening where like it feels like her hips are pointing straight towards camera. Her neck is pointing this way, but then her mid-chest is almost pointing a little bit this way. So my guess is that you have strange like Y rotations on like the 4FK spine. So just make sure that they're all like matching up, and that way you'll save yourself from crying a little bit of tears in spline, because I feel like that might cause issues later. So just watch out. It's easy to see on Aya because like with her shirt you can see like this line and you can tell like what's pointing where. So just make sure that it's all moving together in Y rotation. Same thing here. I'm sorry, but bimbos, man, they're my passion. Just try to round this out to get some more appeal out of her.
I have heartburn that is radiating my head, and I haven't taken a dump since. I haven't taken a dump since.
And I'd watch out, like these poses obviously you're going to change a bit, like if you end up going with the direction that I was talking about. But just watch out for this neck. It feels a little broken right now still. I think I mentioned this last week too. But it just feels a little bit broken, so I would just bring it back just a bit. You can almost still keep her head the same. Also, my pin's being very strange. But yeah, just like bring her neck back a little bit.
Wednesday.
Or it almost feels like it's Z rotation. It feels like it's like hitched this way. Like, just try to bring it this way a little bit more, like in Z.
Morning.
But yeah, I think that would be my main notes for you. Do you have any other questions or anything?
I'm sorry.
It's really coming along.
I'm sorry, and if
good.
it is any consolation, I have heartburn that is radiating my kneecaps, and I haven't taken a dump.
I love this smile. This is really great.
My kneecaps, and I haven't taken a dump since Wednesday morning.
But yeah, I think that'd be my main notes so far. And like, there's more stuff I see about the face, but like,
I'm sorry.
like I said, I would just like as of right now, like focus on the body first, and then if you have any, you know, extra time or like want to start getting more in detail with the face, I would do. The biggest thing is like an eye pass, just on like rounding out the tops of the eyes, making sure that the pupils are like feeling good, like over top of like the eyelid are feeling good over top of the pupils, and make sure that the apex is kind of lining up and all that stuff.
I'm sorry, and if it.
And then also the brows, that's my biggest thing too, is like whenever they're coming down, make sure they're also coming in X. But yeah, I think that's my main notes for you, AJ. Do you have any questions or anything? Make sure about the chat, make sure I'm seeing stuff. Cool. Okay, let's see. Do. Okay, so if AJ, if you don't have any questions, I think next we have Shari. Shari is continuing splining, which is exciting. Okay, cool. Let me make sure this is the most recent. Week 6, cool, yeah. Are we in week 6 of channel blocks already? That's crazy. Okay, so with this one, I took a look at this earlier, but I'll go ahead and play it for everyone. Oh, I can't hear.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
Okay, so with this one,
Holy cow, this is your room?
It's looking good. I can see her start, like, this feels really nice with Jules now. I love that feeling. He's like, he feels really like broken up and really organic and fleshy. I love that on the drop and like the coming back up. So that feels great. So the biggest thing like that just like stuck out to me like at first, the door. Right now the door is matching them, so if I watch at speed, the door almost feels like it's like connected to his back and then just stops as soon as like he stops. Like there's no rebound or overshoot or anything. So basically like the rough timing that like in here is basically the door's here, but then by like 33 it's already out this way, right? Like if this is the edge of the door or whatever. You know, it needs to come out, almost like hit and then like, or you can see me, like almost come out and then like overshoot, right? So like he hits it with his back, it's gonna keep going with him until like here, right? 29 or 30, which you have, like it's separated at this point, right? But it just needs to be further. Like the spacing needs to get bigger and then like hit and overshoot. So like here almost needs to be like hitting the wall or like getting close to it. Or at least the hinge of like the weight of the door, right? It will get to a certain point and then it will like overshoot back. It doesn't need to like hit the wall per se, but just having it like reach its max point of like it coming out and then overshoot a bit back. And then here, like by 44 is when it like eases back from that overshoot back to this position. You know, but 33 or maybe even like 37 is when like it's fully out, you know, here. And then it's gonna start coming back this way, like boom, 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 boom. You know, whatever. Basically, you get the idea of like the spacing of it being big and like easing in. So.
Holy cow, this is your room?
And then the second thing that I noticed, like that stood out to me, was his sniff. Right now, it's all happening in the shoulders coming up. And it just feels kind of like it feels counterintuitive where like his neck juts out and then his shoulders come up. So it feels like he's going like this way instead of like that rotation needs to almost be from like the mid back of the, him inhaling and that chest like filling, his lungs filling up with air. And like, this is kind of a bad drawing, but like basically puffing out that chest. Right, something like this. Obviously this is pushed and Hotel T-esque, but basically what I'm saying is like, I want to see more of that chest like puffing out this way, because right now it's just all kind of happening. See how it feels isolated to the head rotation and the shoulders coming up? Like this chest feels like it stays stuck in screen space. And then he just has like this, and like that's not a sniff, right? Like you need those or it's those lungs filling up with air and like inhaling, like that needs to pivot almost like from the back here, like it's here and then it's pivoting up. So
What's that smell?
because also you go into this, which is nice, right? Like this is good here, so getting that reverse C. You can push, you could go crazy. You could push this out crazy of like when he takes this breath and then like drops. It'll be really nice.
What's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
I like what you added with the hands here, like them coming up and down. But I do feel like they kind of hit a wall and like TY at like 149. It'd be nice to be like, what's that smell? Like just a little like overshoot and settle in the hands. Right, like.
What's that smell?
You know, that's a little too much, and you'd want to ease a little bit more into that end pose, but something like that.
What's that smell?
Just so that way there's a little movement and it doesn't just go clunk and hit a wall.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room?
You probably hear that doo-doo in your dreams, don't you? In your sleep. Anytime I had a shot, my classic shot at AM had music in the background. It was like doo 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 doo. It was like this jazz music, and I heard it in my dreams for a solid 3 months. It's always hard whenever you have like audio with sound effects or music in it. It haunts you.
Holy cow, this is your room?
Watch out with Aya's head. You have a pop here. And then it just goes up. Like you have a pop and then it kind of sticks. And then all of a sudden the spacing gets higher. I think it actually might be in her cog, and I'm seeing it in her head because it's like sympathetic popping. I'll call it. Yeah, I think it's actually the TY with the combination of the TY and like of the cog and like the RZ of the spine. I don't think it's so much the head as it is, because the head seems like it's kind of locked with like the neck, which you'll want to loosen up later. But I think the popping's actually coming from the TY of the cog. So I would go through and check that out and make sure that you're just like, woo, like going into it pretty quick when she gets up. So right now it feels like there might be like a little hitch somewhere in it. Sympathetic popping, yeah. It's a new phrase.
Cow, this is your room?
And then it might be a little combo. If it's not in the TY, if you check it there, I bet you it's in the T's or the rotate Z of either the cog if you're using that, or of the somewhere in the spine. It's in the spine in the torso area. So check it and see.
Cow, this is your room?
And I think honestly that will fix that like immediately. There's a hitch somewhere. Now you just have to be a detective and go find where it's at.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that? This is your room? What? Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell? Holy.
Oh, okay, the face is still unstepped. I was thinking this face was still was splining. And I was gonna give you notes on it, but
Cow, this is your room? What's that smell? Holy cow, this...
I would say this is maybe a little bit like preemptive of like a note. Watch Aya's hand when it comes off of Jules here. Obviously, like especially through the section since I just said like there's a pop somewhere either in like the TY of like the cog or it's somewhere in the rotate Z of the spine. So fix that first and then go for the hand. But for the hand, just make sure that it's making a nice arc to the door. Right now it just feels a little jittery, like there's some pops. Right now it's kind of going up here and then down, which I'm not sure if that's the way to do it. I might have it be just a more broad, like, boom, like grabbing the door instead of coming up and down.
Cow, this is your room?
Also, just watch out for like this constraint popping here. Same thing here, like it's kind of sliding down but doesn't feel connected, so just be aware of like that constraint, like switch.
What's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell? Holy cow, this is...
I think that'd be my main notes for Jules, really. Like, he's looking pretty good.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
One thing that will be nice, like once you start polishing up Jewel, like getting into severe polish, severe polish, but add some finger animation to Jewel's, even if it's really slight. I had a character in handcuffs once, so like, and before, like I had it before I did like my final polish pass, which was actually like months after AM, it was very still. I think I had like one, like, you know, like the fingers spread a little bit, but then I went in and actually animated them and like offset the fingers, and even just had like just tightening or even just stuff like this. You know, like humans very rarely like keep their hands like completely locked, even if you're in handcuffs. Like you can see even like with this, like I move opposite, I'm holding something right now, but like, you know, your hands, you can move a lot with your fingers, and like maybe he goes, holy cow, this is your room? Like maybe he even goes like room? You know, which finger animation like that's tricky because you get into a lot of intersections and stuff with like your fingers, especially the hands being so close. But it'd be nice even just to add like some clenching, or like some, like the index fingers are usually pretty free, right? So maybe he can like move them around a bit, but just having something, because right now they're just like pixel locked pretty much whenever he's like moving around his fingers. You know, even on holy cow, like maybe they kind of come up and like cow, like maybe they scrunch, or like just showing like tension and release of tension in the fingers adds a lot. And like that's something that people look at, like especially when you're applying for jobs, and they're, especially in feature, they look for like those little hand animation or like finger animation or stuff that you don't see unless you're framing through it, but stuff that you feel, right? So
what's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
Or like, okay, what's that smell? Like that's when I would like have them come up, and maybe you see the thumb. It's because maybe he's like more tense, right? So that kind of stuff, and it's fun once you start getting into it, because that's when it starts to make a character feel really alive, because it's little things, human stuff that we do and don't realize it, right? So being an animator, realizing that we do those things and putting that into your animation is one of those feel not see sort of little polishy things, polishy notes. So that's always fun to start adding in.
Holy cow, this is your room?
Like I'm not sure like how much you worked on like Aya and stuff, but like again, like there's constraint popping with the hand when she like grabs it. So just be aware of that.
What's that smell? What's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
But yeah, honestly, I think that'd be my main notes for you for right now.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room?
Yeah, like I said, unless you have any more questions, like feel free to ask away. But I think my biggest thing is just the door, like that I think is pretty big. Watch it, the Aya is popping with like her head, making sure that this is really fluid and like broken up. Like I like how you have like this, like see how the hips start moving there, and like then the chest is like countering and going the other way, and the head, like that's really nice. I just want to see that continued through, right, when she comes up, but in the opposite way of like the hips are still moving, but then the head's dragging a little bit more, and like fixing those pops, you know, figuring out where they're originating from, and like fixing them, I think will help a lot. And then this sniff is like the biggest thing I would really fix right now, like and focus on, is like really pushing that line of action and making sure that that inhale is coming from the chest and not locked to the shoulders, because that makes it feel kind of disconnected from the body. So making sure that that inhale is originating from the chest, and that's where you feel like it's coming from, and tweaking that pose to really like have this front of the chest be the biggest thing that's like pointing out, right? Because he's taking such a big inhale, and that way it won't feel as locked.
What's that smell?
And then little things like overshoots with the hands, all that. So yeah, unless you have any more questions, Shari, I think that's my main notes for you. Make sure I didn't miss anything while I'm waiting. Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. It's looking really good. The shot's come a long way just from like the first time I've seen it. You've done lots of work on it. Cool. The weight of the hammer. Okay, let me take a look.
Cow, this is your room?
It feels good when she takes it off the wall. That feels nice. Right now, it's easing into her shoulder. Yeah, so it feels good to me when she takes it off because it's kind of easing off and then it gets fast, but then it feels like if my brain's only working right now in graphs, but like it feels almost like if you were to think like the TY of the hammer, it feels like it's nice. You have this little overshoot of like it's coming up and then you have here. Like, I don't know, it just feels kind of like it's easing in, but like a really fast transition. So if I'm just to like track this hammer boy. Oh, duh, wait, I have a line on the side I can track. Yeah, see how it gets fast and then right here it starts easing in, but it hasn't even like hit her shoulder yet. I want it to keep going fast in until it hits her shoulder and then overshoot the top, like, right, and then come down. I'm trying to see if I have anything that I can use and possibly hurt myself with. But basically like this, when I want it down, I want it to come down. It's hard to mirror myself, but like here I want it to come down, go overshoot by like tipping, right? Which is going to be kind of difficult because you're basically going to be like countering the rotation. Yeah, basically like pivoting on the shoulder, it's going to come down and then like overshoot and come up. Obviously this is going to happen a lot faster, but in slow-mo it would basically be like here, overshoot, ease up, right? Because right now it's just going here, ease. It's going like here, ease into it. Which it feels like all of a sudden she gets superhuman strength here because like the weight of that hammer is going to be over here, so it needs to go boom. And like her hand basically, once it hits, because I think you end it, yeah, she ends up like pivoting it or like holding the weight of it on the shoulder. So I want to see it like fast hit that shoulder. Like basically think of like the spacing of a foot hitting the ground, right? It's going to be your fastest spacing is going to be on contact, or your biggest spacing is going to be on contact. So same thing with like the edge of that hammer, because also you have all that weight on the other side. Your biggest spacing is going to be hitting there, but then the end of the hammer is basically going to like overshoot itself. So that's going to make the hand overshoot, you know, up. But basically that shoulder pivot is just going to make it feel boom, like that weight. Because right now, and make sure that you're not easing into that shoulder. Like I said, like make sure it's the same kind of spacing that you would of like a foot hitting the floor, foot taking a step. Is your biggest spacing is going to be right before it hits. And then it's going to just hit, like be like a linear key, and then, but it's going to overshoot a little bit from the weight of it on the side. So I that's kind of how I would approach it, because right now the weight of her taking it off the wall feels good because you have like a little bit of ease. Like it feels like she's really trying to like grab it and bring it down, but I would just try to do it on the when it actually hits her shoulder too. So.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
Yeah, I think that would fix it for me. Because like I said, the weight feels good when she takes it off the wall. It's just when it eases into her shoulder, it needs to fast hit, overshoot, and settle. And then I think it will feel really nice. But yeah, do you have any other questions or anything? Awesome, yeah, you're welcome. Excited to see your next pass. It's looking good. Let me see. Awesome, yeah. Yeah, because this is, like, there's more to the shot, right? Like, this is a longer shot, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. All this. I forgot about this, too.
What's that smell? Musky.
That's right. I forgot. That's what the end of the shot is. Yeah, that's a lot. Lots of mechanics. 2 characters, like, oh, crying emoji. I feel you. That's a lot of stuff to spline and make sure it's all working. You've got tons of constraints, and it's looking good, though. So keep at it. Keep chipping away. It's looking good. Awesome. Cool. I can't wait to see it when it's all done. It's going to be a fun shot. Cool. Yeah, you got it. It's gonna be fun. I love the shot. The idea is fun. And yeah, you made great progress on it. Shots like this are really difficult when you have like full body characters, right? And then on top of that, you have constraints, and you have 2 characters like full body. It's difficult. Those are beasts to try to finish up. So you got this. You can do it. We're rooting for you. Okay, so I think that's actually all the feedback links that I have. But let's see. Anuj was going to post something, but he's going to be next week. But he had a question. He wanted my thoughts on how to go from a body mechanic shot to an acting shot, because there are so many things that go into an acting shot. And he said, I find acting shots very tough, so I have to prepare myself in advance. Yeah, so basically like how to start an acting shot. And after you've been focused on body mechanics for a long time, but how to basically transition into it. So that's like, I'm guessing like, you're talking about going from like only doing body mechanic shots into, an acting shot. Basically, my biggest thing that I talked about, I think I talked about this a few weeks ago, but my biggest thing, like when you're learning about acting, is to think about subtext, right? Think about, even if you don't have dialogue, a lot of people just associate an acting shot with audio, and they think about like, oh, what's the subtext behind the audio? But it's like that with any sort of acting. I mean, if you're pantomiming, like there has to be subtext behind what the character's doing. So just starting to think about that and like get that in your head, like when you're thinking about starting an acting shot, one of the biggest things to do is like if you're doing a pantomime shot for your first acting shot, think about what are the 2 emotional beats that are contrasting, 2 contrasting emotional beats that I want to tell a story in my shot. So like a example of like a shot I did for my first acting shot, going from body mechanics into acting, was a pantomime shot of a bride, a runaway bride basically, and like it starts with her being happy and like excited, and she's like, oh, I'm here, I'm finally getting married, and then she looks over at the guy and she's like, do I want to get married? I don't know if I want to get married. So basically you go from happy to like terrified, right? That was kind of my 2 emotional beats, and those are very simple and you can do a lot better than I did, but basically taking like 2 contrasting emotional beats and then finding the story in between it, right? So like think about, I want someone to go from sad to angry, or I want someone to go from angry to sad, or happy to confused, or confused to furious, or like, I mean, you can do all kinds of different emotional beats, because that's what's going to make, again, like I was talking about with AJ's, like contrast, in your acting, like not only in your movement, but contrast in your acting and like what a character is feeling through a scene is really important. So that's one thing I think pantomime helps teach you, because when you're practicing body mechanic shots a lot, that's kind of, it's still a little bit in your head, but that's on the back burner. You're just trying to learn how weight works, and learning how to apply the 12 principles just to the body and movement and timing and spacing and all that. But once you start adding acting on top of that, it kind of opens this whole new world of how you have to think about planning your shots, and a lot of them is based on those emotional beats, or like the contrasts that you want to find. So I think that would be my biggest thing, is like just start thinking about that, of like what you want to do, kind of what you want to show, what emotional beats you want to show that contrast each other. Once you go into acting too, like, that transition, it's really great, I think, to do test of facial performance, because, it depends on what you're doing. Like you didn't say in your message, but you can do acting in terms of just body acting. Like I know even Anim School, I think they teach body mechanics class, and the next one is a body acting class. And I don't think even the characters have much of a face, if any. But, if you're doing something like that, then yeah, you're mostly thinking about silhouette, about your posing, about how your posing conveys an emotion, or an emotion through the movement of your posing, because you're having to rely way more on pantomime because you don't have a face to work with, right? But if you're talking about in terms of going from a body mechanic shot with like a rig like Stewart or something, where, the face, you have eye blinks and that's it, going from that to a full facial rig, like facial performance rig, like, like one of these that I've been doing, like Aya or Jules, my biggest thing for that is, before you even start thinking about, think about acting and all that, and think about what you're going to do for your pantomime shot, or if you're just thinking about learning how to shoot reference or how to get into character, all that, my biggest thing would be to, my biggest advice would be to do a little test, like do some posing test, right? Take your emotional beats. Think, I want to make a happy face, I want to make a sad pose, I want to make a scared pose, I want to make a arrogant looking face pose, right? Stuff like that will help you a ton. Just learn how acting looks on a face. Like, that's really important, but this is very specifically towards you're doing an acting shot with a character that has a face, versus like a Stuart or Stella body acting pantomime. But that's one thing to really think about and try to do poses, stuff like that. Another thing that can be good is doing little test of like a blink. I think Sin talked about this before, of taking that gap between doing, body mechanics, going into acting with like a full facial rig, learning how eyebrows work, like doing it, and only give yourself a day, like do a test of going from like 2 expressions, go from like a happy to like a mad expression, and just practice, like, what do in-betweens look like for that? How do you in between eyebrows? What should the eyebrows be doing? Study things, do a master study of good animation acting, stuff like that you can really learn a lot from. And something that I wish that I did going from like body mechanics into acting would be like, I didn't really know how to do a blink until I was in my last graduating class of AM. And even then, like, I still had to learn a lot to learn about it, but I didn't know about like a 13 frame blink. And like, there's all kinds of lectures and tutorials now out on YouTube where you can look up like how to animate a blink, how to animate, eyebrows, how to animate, the eye mask. That's really important too when you get into acting and facial rigs. So I think that's important too to think about. And if you're doing a shot with a character that has like a facial rig, definitely do those little tests, or like do a lip sync test, if you're getting into dialogue. Or my biggest thing is just like practice a blink, practice eyebrows, practice an expression change. Those are all stuff that basics that you can never master, right? But we're always trying to master. So that would be my advice, is like going into it. Think about emotional beats. If you're starting acting shots, start thinking about, what do you want to do for a pantomime? If you're going to be starting an acting shot, think about 2 contrasting emotional beats and building a story on top of that. Building multiple stories, something that resonates with you, that you want to animate, and also that has a great sense of clarity to it. That's not muddy, it's not confusing. And if you're doing facial rigs, do test, stuff like that. And even if you're not doing a facial rig and you're wanting to do like a pantomime, like a body mechanics exercise, but with body acting, think about posing, right? Do posing test of, stuff that we all did. Like if we were going through school, of like posing test of this week, pose happy characters, and it's just a body, you don't have a face to rely on, or, pose a tired character. That's acting too. So incorporating your acting into your entire pose is really important, because I think a lot of students, when they get to acting, they think, oh, it's in the face. They kind of forget everything that they learned in body mechanics about acting through the body and pantomiming through the body and telling a story through your posing of your body, that they kind of forget about, they think that they can rely on the face. So make sure that you're still keeping that in your thoughts of, your body, you can get 90% of the way there. And you can, basically, like a rule of thumb, it's a bit more difficult if you're doing a subtle acting shot, but you can still do it. But basically, if you turned off all the lights and your character was just in black and white, like silhouette, you should be able to tell exactly what that character's feeling just by their body pose, right? You can't see the face. So kind of the same thing, like just make sure you remember that going into acting. Don't forget your body mechanics. Make sure that you're remembering that's your staple, that's your foundation for your acting. And then that will put you way ahead most students, because a lot of students, it's difficult. It's really difficult to try to remember that when you're overwhelmed with like a new rig, or thinking about all these acting things that you have to think about on top of all the body mechanic stuff and just general animation principles. So layering it smartly, I think, is my biggest advice for acting. So yeah, anyways, hopefully that helps. I think Nuj said that he was going to watch it later because he's not going to be able to be here live today, but yeah, hopefully all that helps. And yeah, I think if that would be it today, I don't think I have anyone else or anything. Yeah. Okay, cool. So if anyone has like any other questions or anything, I'd be free to answer. Or if you had a question about your critique now that's hitting you, feel free to message. But if that's it today, I think I'll go ahead and call it a day. Go get some dinner or something. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming, and I will see you next time. And I will see you tomorrow, actually. I forgot to say, tomorrow is interview with Travis, so if you want, make sure to put your questions in the Discord, or I think on Instagram right now there's like a question thing open that you can put your answers into. Sin wants a demo on my hair. This is, I curled it yesterday and slept on it and didn't brush it today. That's my demo for my hair. And cutting your bangs over your kitchen sink with rusty pair of kitchen scissors at 3 a.m. That is my beauty tips for good hair. Thank you, Sin. Thank you. But yeah, anyways, yes, and that is why it's so important to have strong body mechanics, because it carries into acting, and it is your acting, so. Love it, yeah. That's my hair advice. Yeah. Okay, I will talk to you guys later. Thank you for coming to the stream. Hope you learned something, and see you next time. Bye.